Welcome to this powerful and unforgettable story. Today, we are going to walk through the life of a little girl who never got the chance to grow up, but whose words touched the hearts of millions. She did not live to see freedom, but she wrote about the world she dreamed of. Her name was Anne Frank. This is not just a story about war, hiding, and fear. It is a story about a girl who believed in hope when the world was burning. A girl who used a diary to stay alive in her heart, even when everything outside was trying to destroy her. You will see how a young girl's words became more powerful than any weapon. You will learn how one voice, even in silence, can echo across history. And yes, this video is also perfect for English learners. It is written in very simple English. Every line is clear, emotional, and meaningful. You will feel the story in your heart, and you will improve your English at the same time. Now, let us begin the story of Anne Frank. The girl before the diary. Anne Frank was born on June 12, 1929, in Frankfurt, Germany. She was just like many other girls. She loved to laugh, she loved to talk, and she was always curious about the world around her. Her full name was Anneliese Marie Frank, but everyone called her Anne. She had an older sister named Margot and parents named Otto and Edith Frank. The family was Jewish but not very strict about religion. They believed in education, kindness, and living a good life. Anne's father, Otto Frank, was a businessman. He had served in World War I and was known as a calm, gentle, and thoughtful man. Anne loved her father deeply, and this bond would become very important later in her life. Her mother, Edith, was quiet and proper, and she loved her daughters deeply. But Anne often found it hard to understand her mother, and their relationship was sometimes difficult. Anne and Margot were very different. Margot was calm, serious, and polite, and was energetic, talkative, and always asking questions. She was very intelligent, especially in writing. Even at a young age, her teachers noticed her talent with words, and dreamed of becoming a writer or maybe a movie star, or both. But while Anne was growing, something dark was growing in Germany. In 1933, when Anne was only 4 years old, Adolf Hitler became the leader of Germany. Everything began to change. Hitler and his Nazi party hated Jewish people. They blamed them for Germany's problems and began passing cruel laws. Jewish people were not allowed to attend certain schools. They could not own businesses. They were treated like enemies in their own country. Anne's family felt the danger early. Otto Frank understood what was coming. In 1934, the family moved to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, hoping to find safety there. Anne was only 5 years old when she left Germany. She had to leave her home, her friends, and everything familiar. But in Amsterdam, she slowly began to build a new life. For a while, the Frank family felt free again. Otto started a business that sold ingredients for making jam. They lived in a peaceful neighborhood, and Anne and Margot went to good schools, and made many friends. She was always smiling, always talking, full of energy. She loved books, movies, jokes, and dreaming about the future. Her teachers often said she talked too much, but they also said she was very bright, and knew she did not want an ordinary life. She wanted freedom and adventure. She kept notebooks where she wrote short stories and letters to imaginary friends. Writing made her feel alive. Her dream was to become a famous writer. But once again, the world outside was changing. In 1940, Germany invaded the Netherlands, and was now 11 years old. The Nazis took control, and slowly, life became dangerous again for Jewish families. New rules appeared one by one. Jewish children were forced to leave their schools. Jewish families had to register and wear a yellow Star of David on their clothes. Jews were banned from parks, libraries, and cinemas. Anne and Margot had to say goodbye to their non-Jewish friends. Anne's world became smaller every month. Otto Frank tried to protect his family, but the walls were closing in. Soon there was only one option left. They had to hide. Then something happened that forced them to act immediately. On July 5, 1942, Margot received a letter. It was a call-up notice from the Nazis, ordering her to report for a work camp. Everyone knew what that really meant. Otto read the letter. Then he looked at his wife and daughters and said one sentence. "We go into hiding now." That night, the family packed their bags. They wore many layers of clothes to avoid suspicion. They left behind their home, their neighbors, and even their cat. The next morning, the Frank family disappeared. And this is where the real story begins. The secret annex. The family did not go far. Otto Frank had been preparing a hiding place for months, inside the building where his business was located in Amsterdam. Behind a movable bookcase, there was a hidden apartment. This small, dark space became their new home. It was called the secret annex. The annex was not comfortable. It had small rooms, little sunlight, and no escape. They would have to live there in silence for a long time. Anne was 13 years old when she entered the annex. Just weeks earlier, she had received a birthday gift, a red and white checkered diary. She named it Kitty. From that moment on, Anne wrote in her diary almost every day. Those pages would one day tell the world the truth. Soon, other people joined them in hiding. Another family moved in, along with a dentist named Fritz Pfeffer. In total, 8 people lived in the small space. No one could go outside. Windows stayed closed. During the day, they could not flush the toilet or make noise. Even footsteps had to be soft. They were hiding from death. Kind helpers from outside secretly brought them food, books, and news. Without these brave people, they would not have survived. And spent her days reading, studying, thinking, and writing. Her diary became her best friend. She wrote about fear, loneliness, family fights, her love for her father, her feelings for Peter, and her dreams of freedom. She did not just write about events. She wrote about emotions, and believed that words could survive even when people could not. She once wrote that she wanted to live on after her death, and that is why she wrote. For over 2 years, the world outside burned while Anne's mind grew stronger inside. Then, in August 1944, the secret was broken. The annex was discovered. The people inside were arrested and taken away. Anne's diary was left behind. But her words did not die. They would go on to change the world forever. She dreamed of freedom, believed in hope, and poured her heart into pages. And then, in just a few minutes, everything was taken away. That day, Nazi officers stormed the secret annex. They found Anne and Margot, their parents, Peter and his parents, and Mr. Pfeffer. They arrested them like criminals. The brave people who had helped them were also taken away, but later released. And stood there in fear, her body shaking. Her diary lay on the floor. Her life, the life she had shared through words, was left behind. She did not know it yet, but that diary would survive. She would not. After the arrest, the 8 people were taken to Westerbork, a temporary prison camp in the Netherlands. It was not yet the worst place, but it was still cruel and frightening. The rooms were overcrowded. There was no privacy. Guards shouted constantly. Food was cold and dirty. Showers had freezing water. Fear filled the air, especially the fear of being sent east. Everyone knew what east meant. Death. Because they had hidden from the Nazis, and the others were treated as criminals. They were given the hardest work, and had to carry heavy stones. Margot had to move wet mattresses filled with lice. Rats and insects filled the rooms. Every day was loud, dirty, and exhausting. Still, Anne did not give up. She continued to dream. She believed the war would end soon. After about a month, their names were placed on a transport list, the list no one wanted to be on. They were forced onto a crowded cattle train with over 1,000 people. There were no seats, no food, no air, and no light. Only crying, praying, screaming, and long silence. The journey lasted several days. People fainted. Old people died. Children collapsed. And held Margot's hand tightly. Edith whispered to her daughters. Otto stayed calm, trying to protect his family with his presence. When the train finally stopped, the doors opened to Auschwitz. Auschwitz was not a prison. It was a factory of death. There were gas chambers, crematoriums, watchtowers, and electric fences. Guards with guns and dogs shouted orders. Doctors pointed left or right, life or death. Families were torn apart forever. Otto Frank was sent to the men's camp, and Margot and Edith were sent to the women's camp. That was the last time Anne ever saw her father. Life in Auschwitz was pure suffering. Prisoners were beaten for no reason. Diseases spread quickly. There was no soap, no medicine, no kindness. And Margot's heads were shaved. They were given thin prison clothes full of lice. They woke before dawn, stood in the cold for hours, and worked until their bodies hurt. Food was almost nothing, dirty water and a small piece of moldy bread. And became weak and sick, but she tried to stay strong. She comforted other girls, told stories, and tried to make people smile, even in hell. Edith Frank, however, was slowly breaking. She gave her food to her daughters and slept without blankets on the cold floor. She watched her children suffer and could do nothing. Not long before the camp was liberated, Edith Frank died from starvation, and never got to say goodbye. Later, Anne and Margot were moved again, this time to Bergen-Belsen, another concentration camp. Conditions there were even worse. There were no gas chambers, but people died every day from cold, hunger, and disease. Bodies lay unburied. Typhus spread quickly. Anne and Margot were weak, covered in lice, and too tired to cry, and tried to stay hopeful for her sister. But Margot collapsed one day and never stood up again. She died from exhaustion and illness. After Margot's death, Anne lost her strength. She was alone, sick, and hopeless. She did not know the war would end just weeks later. And Frank died of typhus shortly after her sister. She was only 15 years old. Her body was placed in a mass grave without a name, without a goodbye. But her words had already survived. After the war ended, only one person from the secret annex returned alive, Otto Frank. He came back to Amsterdam alone. One day, Miep Gies gave him a bundle of papers. It was Anne's diary. Otto read it slowly, page by page. Through her words, he discovered who his daughter truly was: brilliant, thoughtful, honest, and deeply human. And wrote about fear, hope, growing up, love, anger, and belief in goodness. She once wrote that she still believed people were good at heart. Otto understood then that Anne had not only written a diary, she had written a message for the world. He decided to fulfill her dream. He prepared her diary for publication, staying true to her voice. When it was published, the world listened. And Frank became one of the strongest voices of the Holocaust. Not because she was famous, but because she was honest. She was not a hero with a weapon. She was a girl with a pen. And her pen was stronger than hate. Today, people visit the Anne Frank house to feel her silence, her fear, and her courage. They come not just to learn history, but to feel it. And Frank never grew up. She never lived freely. But her life was not wasted. Her words teach kindness. They warn against hate. They remind us why freedom matters. And once wrote that she wanted to live on after her death. She did. Every time someone opens her diary, Anne Frank lives again. Every time someone chooses kindness over hate, her voice wins. Her body was destroyed, but her voice survived. And it always will.